Hello and welcome back to the Chatco podcast, where I discuss media in the forms of reviews and discussions. I'm your host, Dragon Thomas Hughes, and today I'm going to be discussing what I said I might do last week, but obviously I wasn't too sure, but obviously actually I'm going to do it, because obviously last week I covered the PlayStation concert, which I went to, and I ended the podcast by saying, obviously by the time that episode went out, the Until Dawn movie adaptation was coming out. I was like, okay, I'm not going to get a chance to do that because I was originally on the Monday. That then turned to the Tuesday. So obviously, I won't get a chance to actually cover that one. So I'll save that for more down the line for like Halloween-ish time. So I said, I might do another video game adaptation then instead, since obviously be around that time. And I was like, okay, another Sony one makes sense, and the only one that came to mind was the Uncharted one. So today I'm actually going to be covering the Uncharted movie, which I have a few notes on here. Obviously, the Uncharted movie was released in 2022 after a long time in development hell, which dates back to, if I got this right off the internet, 2008 is when they first started saying, okay, we want to make Uncharted into a movie. Obviously, it changed. It's been that many years since it first went into development. It's gone through so many different directors' hands. I mean, I've noted down a couple here, and this isn't even all of them. This is just some of them. So the likes of Sean Levi, obviously, who recently did Deadpool and Wolverine. We've got David O. Russell. He did the Silver Linings Playbook. And with I believe that's one with Bradley Cooper. Travis Knight. He did Bumblebee. Obviously, the director, the one who was recently has ventured into the Predator universe by doing Prey and Predator Badlands. He was at Helmet at one point. Dan Trachtenberg or something like that. But obviously, in the end, Sony landed on someone they'd worked with, which is obviously Ruben Fleischer, who of course directed Venom and Zombieland for them. So I'll say recently, within the last couple of months, covered that movie Venom. So this isn't the first time on the channel that I've covered one of this director's movies. Obviously, the movie stars Tom Holland as Nathan Drake and Mark Wahlberg as Victor Sully Sullivan. And obviously, similar to the director situation, the role of Nathan Drake got passed through a few different actors. Either they turned it down, or it was just an idea of this could be an actor for it. Chris Pratt was one of them. I believe he's the one who's recently done the movie The Monkey. Is it Jamie Dornan or something like that? I think he was one attached. That's where I read before. As Chris Pratt turned him down. Obviously, funny enough, Mark Wahlberg was attached to play the titular role, but I think from what I was reading with that one, it was around the point of David O'Sullivan's take on the movie. And obviously, Wahlberg was attached to play, obviously, Nathan Drake at that point. But eventually, obviously, from what I can gather from the deleted scenes, the behind-the-scenes stuff that obviously is on the Blu-ray, he spoke about the fact that he was attached to it for quite a while because he was wanting to do it so badly, but it just never happened. And eventually, Sony called him back down the line, was like, "Oh, you still want to do this Uncharted movie?" And he's like, "Okay." Who's the other guy then? And they were like, "Oh, Tom Holland." And he's just like, wait, Tom Holland? Because obviously at that point, I think he knew, like, wait a minute, I'm not Nathan Drake in this version, am I? And as they eventually became Sully Sullivan. I mean, this isn't even the first video game adaptation Mark Wahlberg's been a part of. He was a part of that god-awful Max Payne adaptation back in, I'm going to say 2004. May have been just slightly after that, maybe just slightly before. I think it was 2004. So, yeah, obviously the movie takes a lot of inspiration from the fourth game specifically, in regards to the fact that they interweave flashbacks to Drake, a younger Nathan Drake, well, in this case, an even younger Nathan Drake, since Holland is obviously meant to be young Nathan Drake. So we get flashbacks to a young Nathan Drake and his brother Sam Drake, which obviously was a part of the fourth game, since that's when they introduced the brother character, and they delved a bit more into the backstory between these two characters, since the three previous ones didn't really delve into their relationship at all. If I remember correctly, it's been a while since I sat through the 4 games, 5 if you count the spin-off game, but I can't remember the previous ones actually focusing on their relationship. I don't even remember Sam being a part of the previous ones. So obviously this takes a lot of material from that, but obviously it does actually pick and choose bits and bobs here and there from the other ones for what it wants to use, particularly the plane sequence. That's obviously straight from a game, particularly the third game. But I've got more on that in a bit. So obviously, like most movie adaptations of games, this one goes down the route of making its own story with the source material available and just taking stuff what it wants and artistic privilege. I think the word is I'm after here, in crafting a story that's their own without actually just repeating what you've already seen. Which, as I say, most movie adaptations tend to do that. If you want an actual complete story, most of the time it's TV that handles that a bit better. Obviously, the other Naughty Dog's project, The Last of Us, on HBO, that's obviously pretty much stuck exactly to its source material, tweaking a little bit here and there, but it's still pretty much the exact same story. But because I'm going with the route of this one being like, okay, we're going to make a prequel and focus on the first time Nathan and Sully work together and basically their early days, and it obviously makes sense that they wouldn't actually delve fully into copying the games exactly. So it's one of those ones where I understand the changes. I understand the people's hate towards them not just following the source material, but with a movie, obviously the timing they have to be able to do it. Obviously, of course, you're going to cut stuff out. Whereas, let's say, look at Last of Us on HBO. Yeah, they still cut some stuff out, but they still had. Was the first season? The first season was it 12 episodes, 10 episodes? I still had essentially 10, 50 plus minute episodes to go through. Whereas they've literally got what, just under 2 hours to get a movie out. So I can understand both sides of the argument here of why they had to do it and why that's not what people wanted. So I can. I'm sitting on the fence here. I know I can understand both sides of this argument. But personally, from what we've got, I don't think we've got a terrible movie. It still feels very Uncharted with some of the very over-the-top action sequences. I say I'm talking about the plane sequence, which is ripped straight from Uncharted 3. And the final act, which is very Uncharted, which isn't even from one of the games, but it feels like it could definitely be in a game in the future. That pirate ship sequence felt like Pirates of the Caribbean if it was made by Michael Bay, because there's a lot of slow motion, explosions, and a lot of action. So it definitely feels like Pirates of the Caribbean, but Michael Bay inspired. So, but yeah, I said my main concern with this movie is the villain, because the villain very early is you've obviously got two villains. You got the main one and you got the secondary villain. Obviously, the main one, which is Antonio Banderas, and then you got the secondary villain, which is the more she does a lot more of the action stunts, whereas he's more the puppet master. But obviously, they would kind of write him out very quickly into the last section of this movie, and even when he's actually in the movie, they don't really write him fully into it. It's like he pops up in a couple of scenes, and he's just. They could have done better with Antonio Banderas, but all I can say is, if I had a pen for every time Antonio Banderas has been in a treasure hunting movie, and they've done fuck all with his character, and very quickly wrote him out of it, I'd have £2. It's not a lot, but it's weird it's happened twice in the past couple of years. And if you're trying to think of what the other one is, it's Indiana Jones. I'll save you a bit of looking through your memory, trying to figure out what the fuck was the one he's trying to think of here. Yeah, it was Indiana Jones. It was the last one. He had a very brief role in that before they quickly dispatched him. But again, that's the same sort of thing what they're doing there. But problem is, unlike Indiana Jones, they can get away with doing that because they bring him in very late into that movie, and he's just there to help them get to the next point. Whereas this character in here is meant to be the big villain. But obviously, they kind of go with the shock factor of, oh, they've got a named actor here, and then he's getting obviously taken over by this relatively new actress. So it's one of those ones where they're trying to catch the audience off guard because you're not going to expect it. So I can understand why they've done that, but at the same time, you've got Antonio Banderas, do something with him. So that's my main complaint really, is either just have one villain or work both properly and give both enough screen time so when the switch does happen, it's not as kicking the balls as it pretty much was in the end. But other than that, I'm not really gonna slag this movie off too much because it does a fine enough job with its 2 hour runtime. Actually, I say just less than 2 hour runtime. So obviously, I did note here that I saw that in a lot of reviews, obviously a lot are complaining about the character development of obviously Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg, and the fact that obviously they're very miscast. And yes, they could have probably chose other people for those roles. Heck, they probably could have gone older, because I know obviously everyone's big pick was Nathan Fillion because he did that short film, so everyone's big pick was him. So yes, they could have gone with the route of trying to adapt the game properly and starting where pretty much the game started, which is an older Nathan Drake. But I can understand why they haven't, because I say starting with the older character version and then trying to make the sequels as they're getting older, it's gonna fuck up a lot. Because if you look at the games, there's not a massive age. He's not very old in the games, and obviously across all 4 games, so he's not getting to the point of, well, if they went to making a movie like 10, 15 years down the line, this actor's gone from, pick a random age, I don't know how old actually Nathan Fillion is, but for example, like the actor they chose was like 50. If they're doing like a sequel like 15 years down the line, so the 4th movie, so I say they're doing these gaps in between them, you're looking at like the actor's like 65. Nathan Drake wasn't 65 in the last Uncharted game. He's not Indiana Jones, where they'll just keep fucking milking the shit out of that franchise until Harrison Ford kicks the bucket. So it makes sense for them going, okay, let's start in the beginning. Let's start with a younger actor, one that, let's say, 15 years down the line. For example, again, I don't know how old Tom Holland is, but say the first one comes out when he's 30. 15 years down the line, say he's on the 4th movie, if they go that far, he's 45. That's not too bad. That's pretty much like Nathan Drake's sort of age range. He's not too old like Indiana Jones, but he's just right. So I can understand why they went with that. And obviously with Mark Wahlberg, again, with them going with the younger Nathan Drake, it makes sense having a younger actor, or yeah, young enough actor to play Sully. So then again, when they get to this point down the line, when he's actually at the point of the right age, it's not as if they've gone, okay, we've straight up cast this 56-year-old straight away, that 15 years down the line, they've reached, I say, either 65 or 75. So at least they're trying to balance it, basically, so they can try and at least get multiple movies out of them if the box office receipts are good enough to get multiple movies. And I know the first one was good enough that they obviously have commissioned a sequel, and I think as of last year, the sequel is in development. I don't know how far they are in the writing process, so hopefully within the next like year or 2 we get the second one. But I don't think it'll be the next year, probably the next like 2-3 years maybe. Just depends how quickly they can get this one out. So obviously this one struggled a lot because of COVID. So I know they started filming it. I think I've read just before, during 2020, and obviously they had to take them all breaks till they eventually got up and running again to finish the movie off, before obviously pushing it all the way back to 2022 to obviously at the point where cinemas were starting to make money again. So it makes sense why they were delaying it a lot. So again, I'm not too fussed with the casting. Yes, again, they could have gone with older cast members, but for the ones they went with, I'm not too fussed. Obviously, Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg do a good job delivering their takes on these characters. Yes, they may not be exactly the takes that everyone wanted. So I know that they pretty much get to the point at the end of the movie, but that's what this kind of movie is. It's one of those ones where they develop as they go along, to the point of they're at this more accurate to the game sort of situation. Yes, they're not fully developed, but that's something they can look at within sequels. So again, I'm not going to be too angry with them not fully developing them in the first movie. Again, they've got 2 hours, so they're trying to at least sell everyone on this movie rather than fully develop the characters. And yes, they probably could have. There's a lot of stuff that they probably could have done with them, but again, this is where sequels come in. This is where we can do a lot more with them as the movies go along. So yes, other people could have played them, but with what we got, I'm not as pissed. Because they're decent enough. They get the job done, basically. And if Nolan North gives his approval, then why are we fucking moaning? He's literally fucking Nathan Drake. And he even gets a cameo in this movie, which is fucking amazing. Which is obviously he gives a little nod when they mention the fact, obviously, they fell out of a plane in a car. He gives a little nod to, oh, I've done that before. Come on, it's not enough. It's not one of these fucking background blinking and miss it cameos. It's fucking right in your face. Yeah, it's a few second cameo, but it's fucking worth it. Yes, they could have worked him in a bit more like they did in The Last of Us show with obviously Troy Baker and the rest of obviously The Last of Us game cast members, where they've actually worked them into either new characters that have a significant part in the show, or in the case of two characters, they literally gave them the exact same roles again to bring to live action. Yes, they could have done something with Nolan North in this, but again, it's a movie rather than a TV show, so it makes sense to just be a little nod. Heck, they could always bring him back in sequels as little cameos here and there, and this character is actually something more than just this random guy they meet on a beach. Who knows? I mean, they're clearly trying to push more accurate designs for the future, obviously, because at the end of the movie, they pretty much give, during the final sequence, they give, obviously, Tom Holland's Drake, the actual iconic Nathan Drake, obviously, gun holsters, and then with Sully, they give him the iconic mustache. So they're very clearly leaning a bit more to going close to the games in the future. So I'm not going to be too pissed that they haven't done it straight away. Yes, they could have, but again, they could have done this so much even fucking worse. But for what we got, it's not bad. So I've already done that. I've already done that. Obviously, the movie does as well offer two end credit scenes. One to tease Sam being a big part of the next story, which is again a part of the fourth game, which is what they took heavy inspiration with this one on, since that is well, it's one of the bigger ones available. So it makes sense that they took a lot of the inspiration from that. Plus, I feel like with them doing the prequel story, it kind of makes sense to intertwine the Sam and Nathan story within that to give you a bit more understanding. Because if you look at the actual first Nathan Uncharted game, it kind of just throws you straight into it. There's not actually much known. You're straight into like this action sequence. You're on a both at the start of the first game. Because literally all this film is missing is obviously the love interest character. Obviously, they kind of put Chloe in this situation, but she's not meant to be. She's not the full love interest character that we obviously know and love from the games. And I can't fucking remember her name off the top of my head. It's been that long since I played Uncharted. So hopefully the sequels give us that character and allow us to explore the relationship between her and Nathan to the point of eventually down the line where they literally have a child. So that's the one credit sequence. And so the other one then is the tease, the Mark Wahlberg iconic Sully mustache, and that they're about to go on some other globe-trotting adventure. So I just think overall, I mean, it's funny. There's a lot of action. There's constant stabbing each other in the back. At least with them two, they're not literally stabbing each other in the back in terms of with a physical knife compared to obviously the villains. They're more the case of, well, I can see an option here to get out of here with all the stuff while you get fucked over. So there is that, but they do it in a kind of more humorous way. Because obviously Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg do bounce off each other decent enough to get by in this movie. I mean, I did pick this movie up when it first came out on 4K Steelbook. And obviously the Steelbook itself is the iconic plane sequence. And obviously in the background, I never actually fully looked in the background of the Steelbook. I haven't seen the Steelbook for a while because I haven't watched it for a while. But I was in the background, you got the world to sort of sum up the idea of a globe-trotting adventure, because you can see in the background you got Singapore, Agra, Giza, Manhattan, Barcelona, Paris, Rome. So it's the idea of this globe-trotting adventure. Yes, this one doesn't go on a full globe-trotting adventure. It sticks to a couple of locations, but that's fine enough. And obviously inside the actual 4K disc is gold. Well, it's not actual gold, but the picture's gold. Whereas the Blu-ray is the compass. So it's not, to be fair, that's not actually a bad steelbook. So obviously this movie does use a lot of visual effects. If you watch the behind the scenes that are on the Blu-ray. It does showcase some of the stunt sequences with all the blue screens, but it does also show the utilization of practical effects. Because I know they actually utilize real ships, which is fucking amazing. They actually built these ships to do it on. But then overall, I think the CGI isn't that bad. There's one or two shots I noticed that I was a bit. One of them was during this plane sequence, and I think there was one later on. It's mainly when you see the person's face, you can just tell that they are fully digital. So that does hinder it a little bit, but I think overall they do enough good digital effects that these one or two moments aren't as, noticeable. Well, they are noticeable at the time, but overall it doesn't fully affect the overall CGI of the movie. But they do a good job, like, balancing digital and practical. Of course, the crazy ass sequences require a lot more digital and a lot more stunt work on blue screen rather than doing obviously physical stunts on the actual stuff. But they still fucking look pretty cool. And so they do a good job. To be fair, I really like the fact that they managed to pretty much like adapt that plane sequence. That was so good to watch. And another director wants to adapt the bike sequence from the fourth game if they do a sequel, or one of the sequels if they ever get that far. I know he wants to adapt that bike sequence, which would look pretty fucking cool. But I kind of want to see the train sequence adapted as well, because that was a really good one in the second game. But I'm interested to see if they go as crazy as Uncharted has before. Because obviously Uncharted, I think 1 and 2, I'm trying to remember 3 off the top of my head, but 4 definitely didn't. 1 and 2 obviously added like some sort of, at times, like monsters. So it went into that crazy aspect. Because it's sort of a Uncharted location, so there's some crazy ass shit there. So I wonder if the movies will go that far, because this one doesn't really. This one stays kind of tame. The main villains are just, well, mercenaries. That's it. They're also looking for what they're looking for, which is something, as what most of the Uncharted games are. There's mercenaries looking for the exact same things. But even when they get to the locations, the only times they really go over the top is with the crazy ass stunts, i.e. the plane, and then the two ships flying with them, like Pirates of the Caribbean flying around them and shit like that, trying to fight with swords. That's the only time it really goes over the top in this one, compared to, say, the games when sometimes, I swear it was the second one, when there's like these weird humanoid monsters underground. Like, it doesn't go that level of crazy. Yes, it goes crazy, but not that level. So I'm interested to see if the movies decide to go that level of crazy down the line. But as I say, we'll see. Well, then again, we'll see if the second one even actually gets made. Because I know it made its money, and I know they said it's in development, but, I mean, it took how long to get the fucking first film out? And there's plenty of films that have been greenlit for a sequel, and it's just not happened. So we'll see actually how it goes. So hopefully, once Holland's finished with the Marvel stuff that he's filming, hopefully he'll dive back into Uncharted, because he does seem very enthusiastic. Because again, if you watch the behind the scenes stuff, he speaks about his obviously experience actually playing Uncharted 4 while I was shooting Homecoming. I think it's the one he said. So, and he obviously, the director himself pointed out multiple times that he obviously gave advice, like, oh, this is what Nathan would actually be doing. This would be cool if this was here. So he does show enthusiasm for this character and for this franchise. So I would like to see him be allowed to venture back into the role of Nathan Drake for a sequel. So I want at least a second one. If they go any further than that, great. But I would like to see at least a second one, see where they can go, and see what they do with a second one story. Because I feel like with the first one, because from what I can tell, it was about 2020 when the director stepped in to take over. I feel like at that point they already have the script and everything writ, and he's probably looked at it and gone, yeah, it seems good, but he probably hasn't had as much influence as he probably would have liked from the get-go on it. So I feel like if they do a sequel, he'll probably have a lot more influence early on, unless they get another director in. I'd like to see him have another go, because he's done a good job, and he's done a good job with the other stuff he's handled, i.e. Venom and Zombieland. So I would like to see him get another go, but if we get another director, hopefully it's, again, someone who has enthusiasm for this franchise, has enthusiasm for these characters, because he's, again, just like Holland, seems to have that enthusiasm for the franchise. So hopefully, I say, forget the sequel and he's not involved. Hopefully, the person they get involved has the same level of passion as he seems to have had making this movie. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. Let me just double check my notes here. Yeah, that's pretty much all of it. I say overall, it's not a bad video game adaptation. It's actually probably one of the better video game movies out there. Yes, it's not a perfect adaptation, but it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a prequel focused on a younger Nathan Drake at the start of his adventures, rather than a more veteran Nathan Drake who's already been on these adventures multiple times. So yeah, it's not perfect adaptation, but it's not terrible. There's plenty out there I've had that have been dreadful, and there's plenty out there I've had been good. It's kind of not even in the middle, really. I'd say it's further up, because I found it pretty entertaining, and a pretty fun movie. So I think, similar to the directors of a movie I covered, Venom, I'm going to give this Uncharted a 8 out of 10. I say it's not terrible, it's not amazing, it's a pretty solid, though, take on Uncharted. Yeah, a lot of people disagree, but that's because a lot of people probably wanted, and definitely wanted, them to start off straight away with the more veteran Nathan Drake and not go for the slow route of slowly getting him to that point. Again, if you wanted that slow route, just play the fucking video game. But this is them trying to go, okay, it's trying to make multiple movies out of utilizing the same actor rather than start off with a much older actor. So again, I can understand both sides of this argument, but for me personally, I feel like an 8 is a pretty solid score for this movie. Yeah, it's not as good as its video game counterpart, but since when are video game movies ever as good as their video game counterparts? It's just life with video game adaptations. The only one you could argue is pretty close is The Last of Us. That's the one you probably argue is pretty close. But we all know the greatest video game adaptation out there is the Sonic franchise, because they're fucking killing it right now. So yeah. So I can't think of anything else. If you've seen the Uncharted movie, put your thoughts in the comments below. Obviously, what did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? What would you like to see them deal with in obviously a sequel? Obviously, what things that from the games would you like to see them try and adapt into the movie? Because I do want to see the train sequence. That was pretty sick. Obviously, I know Mission Impossible kind of did it recently, but I'd like to see them try and do it with Uncharted, because Uncharted did it first between the two franchises. So yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else here. Obviously, I kind of do at some point want to play the Uncharted games on the channel. That's something I'm looking into probably once I finish Assassin's Creed, because I'm kind of glued into that at the moment, and I kind of promised myself that I wouldn't really delve into another franchise while I'm dealing with that. Obviously, yeah, I know I took the time away to the Suicide Squad game, but that was one game, whereas Uncharted is the case of there's 4 games, so the only way I could really do it would be between Assassin's Creed games, focus on one Uncharted game and keep going that way, rather than back to back. But I don't know, I'll kind of look into it down the line, so we'll see. I do want to play it again, though, because I fucking love the Uncharted games. Uncharted 4 was probably was my first fucking PlayStation 4 game I played. I never played anything before that. That was the first one I chucked on and was like, this game is fucking sick. So yeah, obviously you can check the podcast out on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Audible, etc., or you can check it out on YouTube. And yeah, other than that, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
If you like what you've seen, don't be afraid to throw us a little like and subscribe. That's always very appreciated over here. And well, I'll see you on the next video.